What's up, everyone, and welcome into the Buffalo Sports Collective. It is Wednesday, October 9th, 2024. As always, I am PK alongside my co-host Phil for episode 307. Before we even start off, we want to give all of our thoughts down to everybody in the southeast part of the country. They're going through a lot of stuff right now. They just had a hurricane, a week and a half ago. They got a monster one hitting Florida now. I have family members that are not currently down there, but they have homes down there that it is, all of Florida is pretty much in the path of it right now. So everybody's going to get hit. They're a little bit south of where the eye is supposed to hit, but I can't imagine week and a half ago you get hit by a category, what was it, category 4 or 3 or 4 a week and a half ago, and now it's a category 5. It might be down to a category 4, which is still a monster coming in. So our thoughts are with everybody down there. Whatever you're going through, it does not sound like it's going to be a pleasant month, year, however long it's going to take to rebuild. Because Brooke and I were down there visiting my parents it'll be almost 2 years ago in February coming up. So a year and a half ago, and they were still cleaning up from the bad hurricane they had. It's crazy how wind, rain, and water can do so much damage to things down there.
Yeah, the ridiculously high speeds. They turn quite terrible. I know we have our snow to deal with for sure. And the blizzards the last couple seasons have been rougher than they had been for a long time, and there was some pretty nasty blizzard action. But luckily, for the most part, you lose power, and definitely some homes got destruction and things of that nature. But to the widespread devastation and kind of just path that the hurricanes and things like that hit Florida, and I couldn't imagine losing your entire house and literally having it be washed away and just trying to have to, comes to grip with that. And also, where do you go from there? So crazy to try to put yourself in their shoes. It is just not a good situation, very stressful, especially all the people that evacuated. You are trying to find where to evacuate, and then the whole time you were evacuated, I'm sure you're just kind of sitting there wondering what's going on with your home back home. So wild situation. Like you said, thoughts are down southeast.
Yeah, so hopefully everybody's staying safe if you're able to evacuate, which they were all saying that you should evacuate. Hopefully you are able to do it in a timely manner, and I know timely manner, this thing came out of not nowhere, but it built up speed and power very quickly. So hopefully everybody's staying safe down there, and our thoughts are down with everybody there. Again, I hate doing this kind of stuff because there's never a good transition. So you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. I don't even know if anybody ever uses Threads or Blue Sky anymore, but toss it out there just in case. Don't forget to follow our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. That includes YouTube, where we're getting more and more views there all the time. Appreciate everybody for listening. Audio or video side, really, we're getting consistent numbers even through the offseason, so we're very excited for when the Bandits kick off in year 4. Check out our website at buffalosportscollective.com. You can check out our store on our link tree on all our social media sites. Yes, Blue Sky and TikTok still have our link tree, or at the top of the website by hitting the shop tab. You can represent the BSC on the go, and look for time breakdowns in the description of the show. Yes, I did switch out my Matt Milano jersey for a Stefan Diggs jersey behind me, just for the lulz, and it was no lulz on Sunday at 1 o'clock, even though it was a fun time slot. Bills, 23-20 defeat on a last-second 59-yard field goal. We thought the Ravens game was rock bottom, and then they head down south to Houston, and they get a boot to the face and a "how you doing, partner?" and sent on their way back to Buffalo with getting their teeth kicked in. This might have been Allen's worst game since he was, a rookie. 9 for 30 for 131 and 1, and the 1 was all Keon Coleman, kind of making that go. There's a lot to digest in this one, and I think it's just safe to say that I'm not going to try to overreact. I'm not going to try to underreact. I'm going to try to react perfectly to this, and it's going to be very difficult to do. But this team could use that guy right about now.
Yeah. I just it was an ugly game, and a lot of people have said, which I agree, the score doesn't really indicate how the game went. They were lucky to be that close. The 9 for 30 and 131 from Allen is kind of how the game realistically went, and the team leading, 2 catches for Kincaid and tied with the team leading 2 receptions by Hollins, and just terrible. I mean, nine completions, 9. And I know James Cook actually had a decent game, 20 for 82, not amazing, but he looked okay. Just gross. The offense looks beyond lost, and I think the big thing with this game, and I think the big thing with the first 3 games, was that the first 3 games were exceeding expectations and kind of a mirage of what this team actually is. And if you really go back to preseason predictions and kind of, your concerns, your fears about this team, that's what you're seeing these last 2 games, is what this team really is when they're playing a competent defense and they have no weapons, which is what they, came into the season with, was very few weapons, especially when your one go-to weapon, Shakir, is gone. This is what the team is. Like, this is what we expected coming into this season, was a very rough offense, and it was going to be up to Brady to make it work. And I know Allen's 9 for 30 doesn't look good, but how much of that is scheming as well? How much is that getting people open? Nobody is really hyper-targeted. Like Kincaid, what is he? But at the same time, like right now on this team, he's your wide receiver 1, which he kind of was going into the season. And are they trying to get him the ball as much as possible? Are they finding ways to get him open to get the ball to him as much as possible? I mean, you look at the Jets game, and I know Garrett Wilson and Kincaid are not the same player, but Garrett Wilson finally had 22 targets in one game. That is hyper-focused on your best player. He caught 11, I believe, for over 100 yards. Not great. 50% is not good, but he at least had some yardage, and the Bills just don't have that guy. And Kincaid should be that guy right now with Shakir gone, but 6 targets to what should be your wide receiver 1, tying 6 targets with Mac Hollins. Like, that's not good. And Samuel, I don't understand what they're doing with him. He's a better wide receiver than he is showing, and I don't like what they're doing with him at all. Brady's had Curtis Samuel before. He was better with Washington, which, my goodness, how is he better with Washington than he is with the Bills? Like, this offense is lost, and they look like they have no answers. And I know, again, you look at it from a wide perspective. They got 20 points, but realistically, these last 2 games have been brutal, and they really shouldn't have even had the points that they got in this game. It was a broken play that Coleman made work, and then just some penalties, another big play, and a touchdown. Overall, the offense looked horrible, and I just don't know where they go.
Yeah, I mean, this defense kept this game as close as it was, besides a one blown coverage by a rookie in his first start and Cole Bishop not having the backside help. This defense, who missed Terrell Bernard greatly, inserting him back, but you had no Ed Oliver, you had no Von Miller, you had no Taron Johnson, you had no Taylor Rapp, and this defense is like, hey, just get on our back. They gave every opportunity they had to this offense. They caused Bernard got the pick on the drive, and then Smoot caused the fumble to get the ball inside their own red zone, and Buffalo came away with 3 points on that. It's just
zero yards.
The offense is not good enough, and it's rearing its ugly head. And I think I don't think we hammered home enough about the concerns that we had in the first 3 weeks. And when you're looking at it, hey, you blew the 3 teams out, but now you're looking back at it, and I know hindsight's 2020. Arizona's defense going in is not very good, and it took them a while to get going, but then they got going. Miami's defense is not good at all, and they keep getting worse. And then you lost Tua Tagovailoa early on in that game, so they had no comeback. Jacksonville, their defense stinks as well. So you beat up three lower tiered teams, especially when you're talking about the defense. Kincaid, let's drop the whole narrative of even going back to last year that he's just this wide receiver. He's a regular tight end that can't get open, and the one time he does get open down the seam, Josh Allen underthrows him. And then, hey, he beat the linebacker. Let's not run the exact same play again and just have Josh Allen hit him in stride the next time. Let's just there's way too much Hollins, and I get it. There's not enough wide receivers on the outside, but he's a special teamer. That should be a wide receiver 4, and he was one of the targeted guys on the last drive. Like that can't happen. Samuel's your new gadget guy. He took over for Hardy, who took over for Isaiah McKenzie. He's an overpaid gadget guy that they can't figure out how to use. You shouldn't miss. Your offense shouldn't crumble like this when Khalil Shakir, who is a 5th-round pick, is not in your lineup. Like, that's saying so much. Allen wasn't good, and I'm not excusing him whatsoever. He was pressured on 16 dropbacks, went 1 for 14 for 24 yards. But again, nobody's getting open. Like, This offense, what we saw from Joe Brady once he took over, all the wins were nice, but it's not like they were blowing people out. It's not like they were putting up big scores. They were just winning games, which is great and all, but you had Stephon Diggs, you had Gabe Davis, who, for all his faults, I would kill to have a Gabe Davis on this team right now. For all the crap that I talked about him, I would kill to have a Gabe Davis because at least he's down the field and you could throw to him. Wide receivers can't get open. They can't get involved. Joe Brady can't really scheme any of these guys open. Like, I'm watching the Kansas City game yesterday, and I'm going, like, I understand Andy Reid is a special breed, but you're just looking at all these other teams that have wide receivers coming open all the time. Like, have we seen a wide receiver come open in the last 2 games? At least the last 2 games. We can probably go back to all 5 games. That's just running wide open. Like, I don't remember that ever happening. And I'm not even talking about, like, the down the field shots because, I mean, Hollins, that man should never play outfield in baseball whatsoever because he cannot track a ball. That ball that Josh Allen threw to him on the right-hand side, that was perfect. Like, all you had to do was run under that ball, and he got lost and couldn't find it. It's just, this offense is lacking playmakers besides James Cook. He's their best playmaker outside of Josh Allen. And you're looking at this, and yes, I agree, and Brandon Beane even said it, this is a transition year. But the big issue is you're wasting a prime year of Josh Allen when you could have went out and got somebody like Darnell Mooney making $13 million. Wouldn't it be better to have Darnell Mooney than a Curtis Samuel if you're going to use Curtis Samuel the way you are right now? Like, you didn't have to sign MVS. You didn't have to sign Curtis Samuel. There's pretty much the money right now to go out and get a Darnell Mooney. And again, I know hindsight's 2020 what he's doing in Atlanta right now, but some of the blame here has to fall on Brandon Beane because the free agents that he has brought in so far have not panned out. I mean, Coleman, he's a rookie, and this is kind of what you were expecting for a rookie. But Kincaid, I understand he was a draft pick last year. He was supposed to be this special 1.5, wide receiver / tight end. He has not developed into much of anything. Hollins, he's what he is. He's a fourth, fifth wide receiver, and they're using him as he is. Curtis Samuel, I don't know what the heck's going on with him. MVS, he's got 2 catches on 9 targets. Dawson Knox, who earned that giant extension, and we didn't mind it, and then they drafted Kincaid. He's got 3 receptions for 30 yards on 5 targets through 5 games. This offense is lacking playmakers. They're lacking people to step up. And again, it shouldn't take a Khalil Shakir injury not being in the lineup to completely dismantle this entire passing game. This entire passing game has been really, really bad since Joe Brady took over, which shouldn't have happened because his days in Carolina, he had 3,000-yard wide receivers, and one of them was Robbie Chosen Anderson. It's just, and one of them was Curtis Samuel. It's this offense is very, very scary in a division and a conference that's just asking for somebody to take charge.
Yeah, I mean, my big comparison was going to be Kansas City. Again, Andy Reid, obviously a mastermind among men, and we know it. I mean, that's why he's got the Super Bowls he does. But I mean, you look at what they just rolled out. I mean, they just lost Rashee Rice for likely the year. They just rolled out Juju, Hardman, Gray, Worthy, Pirine, Hunt, and Kelsey, and Mahomes had over 300 yards against a pretty solid Saints defense. Like, those are, no offense, I mean, Worthy is a rookie, and then you got a bunch of nobodies in Kelsey. Juju's way past his prime, and yet they were able to find a way to get him 7 of 8, catches for 130 yards. Juju Smith-Schuster, who hasn't done that in God knows how long. So, I mean, just to be able to scheme exactly what you said, like 7 of 8 targets for that guy. That means he's getting open 7 of 8 times, enough for Mahomes to hit him. I know Mahomes is really great, but so is Allen. Like, it's not an excuse. Like, there just has to be a way to get these players open. All of them. Like, no matter how bad they are, the list I just read off isn't that much more talented than what the Bills are rolling out right now, and yet they can find a way to get these guys open time and time again to be able to throw for over 300 yards, and Allen's 9 for 30 for 131. I mean, it's exactly, unfortunately, it's what we expected coming into the season, and now it's actually showing up in games, and everyone's kind of, why is this happening? Well, this is what you rolled into the season with, and this is what you kind of expected this offense to be with these players on paper. Like, you have no wide receiver 1 at all. You barely have wide receiver 2s on this team. You really just have a group of wide receiver 3s and 4s and a rookie who, I mean, not only being a rookie, he's not supposed to be your wide receiver 1. He's an outside, go beat the guy kind of guy, but he's not a separator. He's not your, okay, it's 3rd and 6, we need a first down, can we go to Coleman? Like, no, you can't. That's not what he's there for, which is fine. I mean, he's great eventually for the Bills. He will be a good pick most likely, but for this team and what they need, he's not what they need. And it's even more frustrating when you see someone like Brian Thomas Jr. just absolutely tearing up the Jaguars, and everyone being like, oh, he's one of the best rookies, arguably better than Harrison Jr. right now for his team. Looks like an alpha wide receiver 1, and the Bills were, 4 picks away from getting that kind of wide receiver as a rookie. But no, we'll just trade back and accept Coleman, because why not? Why not? Miss the big swing on the wide receiver class. That's lovely.
Yeah, I don't have much more. Here's some stats. Wide receivers on the year so far: 44 receptions for 552 yards, 5 touchdowns on 74 targets. Tight ends: 18 receptions, 196, 1 touchdown, 29 targets. And the running backs right now are your top pass catchers right now. 19 for 202 and 224 targets.
They look great.
I'm going to make a note of this, and moving forward, I shouldn't have used the first 3 games to get myself past what I thought originally going into the season. I should have stuck by my guns a bit more, because I did predict them to finish as the 4th seed, win their division, and be a one-and-done playoff team. And I think that's going to be a lot more peaks and valleys in this season. I think you're going to get more of these, heartbreaking losses or blowouts like we saw last year. And I think you'll still get some of those games where the Buffalo Bills blow out other teams, because this defense is very, very... They can be very, very solid when they need to, even when they're lost pieces. I mean, that's one of the bright points on this team. Bernard back helped a ton. Carter looks like a legit player back there as a 3rd-round draft pick. He was making plays all over the place. Dorian Williams has improved a ton just this year. I saw him making more plays on Sunday than I have earlier in the season. You need Rapp back. You need Johnson back. You need Oliver back. That's no doubt whatsoever. Nico going out did help the defense a lot. But in the second half, after that opening drive field goal, 3 plays for 2 yards and a punt. 4 plays, 19 yards and a punt. 10 plays, 55 yards, then the Bernard interception. 4 plays, 12 yards, Smoot causes a fumble right inside the 20, and then 3 plays, 21 yards, forces a punt. That should have been good enough for your offense to put up points and sustain drives. Like, this offense is very, very scary right now, and they're going into a Monday Night Football game versus a division rival in the Jets in a must-win game, because you can't go 3-3. Jets will be 3-3, and they'll have the head-to-head tiebreaker over you. And they did just fire their head coach, and yes, season long, it's bad to fire your head coach, because most of the time, besides like Las Vegas last year, I think it was Pierce, it doesn't help long term. But that one game right after the firing, your team gets up for the game. It can, and Jets have given Buffalo a hard time nonstop, and their defense is legit. Their offense does stink. Aaron Rodgers does stink. He definitely got the head coach fired. But the Jets have been a thorn in the Buffalo Bills' side for a very long time. This Monday night game is an absolute must-win in Week 6.
Is Aaron Rodgers out?
He should be playing, I believe.
Yeah, the only negative I really had for the defense in this, like you just mentioned, the second half really was much better other than that 10 play, but the Texans were 8 for 16 on third down, which is 50%, which is pretty high, and they had some really long third downs that they kept converting, and it was just
that everybody at home saw that swing pass to the running back to pick up that long, what was it, like 3rd and 12?
Yeah, it was long. There were a few of them. They were 3rd and like 5+, and they just kept picking them up. I was like, oh my gosh, like you guys have them in this great position. Shut it down. And they just couldn't do it. And the Bills on the other side, as we just mentioned, their offense was terrible. They were 3 for 14 on third down. That's not going to get it done. The defense did look much better, though. Dorian Williams, again, I think the big thing with him is he's just, and this is nothing against him. It's fine. It is who he is. He's just not the linebacker one, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. He's a great secondary linebacker out there. Compliment, fantastic. With Bernard back and taking some of that pressure off of Williams, I think it let him thrive and do a lot more of what he needed to do. I think he might have been either a little bit in his head or just over his head. He's just not really that prototypical linebacker one, running the defense, doing everything. With Bernard back, I think Dorian Williams really took that extra step in this game. And I think as long as he has that person kind of above him, I think that makes him much, much better of a player.
So like we mentioned, the next game they have is Monday night, another primetime game would be versus the Jets. I think that's their last primetime game until San Francisco Sunday night, I think December 1st, because we're going to have to figure that out when we start going back to 2 weeks. Little teaser. But we will move on to the Buffalo Sabres. We have 2 games to talk about, even though I don't really want to, because Friday versus Devils lost 4-1. Power was the only goal scorer. UPL 19 of 22 saves. Shots were 31-23 in favor of the Sabres. And then Saturday versus the Devils, they lost 3-1. Tage was the only goal scorer. Levi was really, really good. 34 saves on 37 attempts, 36-18 in shots for the Devils. Peterka got concussed on a very dirty hit that was ruled a 2-minute interference. NHL, way to go. Benson, I think his was lower body. He missed the second game. And then Abi Kubel, he had a brace on his knee. They just read 3 to 6 weeks injury. So great start to the season, Sabres. Maybe you shouldn't have spent 2 weeks over in Europe, because real gross. Real gross. Still 80 games to go. But, oh, man, this was not a start to the season that you wanted. And Thursday night, Phil, if they do not score first and the other team scores first, those boo birds are going to be out flying all over that new arena and crapping all over that new Jumbotron.
Yeah, I think they were confused that the season started and that this was not preseason, because that's how they came out for both of those games. It was just more of the same. I thought, honestly, I know you only had one positive. I thought UPL played fine in the first game. He did make some big saves. I think most of the goals against him really weren't on him. The first one was a gross turnover in the off or defensive zone that led to a quick goal. The other one was a wild tip he didn't really see. The other one, I think he overcommitted a little bit, but the entire team was puck watching as 4 players watched the puck go right between them, and the Devil just skate between all 4 of them and blast it into an empty net because UPL was gone at that point out of the net. So I thought besides that, he made a lot of big saves. I know it was only 19, but he did make some pretty big ones to look okay. Levi looked incredible. Outside of that, I think everybody looked awful. Power play looks terrible. The offense looks beyond lost, and just nothing. They're so bland. Like, there's just, like, no one has a pulse or a personality or some swag. Like, again, I don't know if they're tired or if they really thought this was still preseason, but the offense came out and they just did the same thing over and over and over. They'd skate in. Whoever got in first, if they had some mildly okay opportunity to shoot it just at the net, they would just kind of wrist it and, I don't know, hope for the best. If that didn't happen, you dump it in and throw it back to the top and they would wrist it on net. Like there was just no like exciting offensive plays where you're watching someone actually do a move or a pass or something. Like where's the speed we talked about, the intensity, the Devils just literally skated around them for 2 straight games and made them look awful. I mean, even the shots, 31-23, 36-18. Like, okay, so this high-flying, aggressive team came out and did absolutely nothing in back-to-back games. It looked real gross. Like you said, 80 games to go. I'm trying to kind of just throw these 2 away and hoping that with this little bit of a break, they can look at these 2 games and figure something out. But the other issue with the injuries and with what they brought into this season is if you have injuries for this offense, you have nobody behind them to step up into these positions. Yes, you have some, prospects that are great, but are they enough to take over and really put into these spots? I mean, Peterka is a top line forward. Do you have that replacement? Benson, second line forward. Do you have that replacement? Kubel, third line. I mean, just you lost 3 forwards and on a team that was already kind of scraping by with forward depth and just kind of hoping what they were throwing out there, which isn't amazing, would kind of work. And now you've lost a good chunk of it already. I know they'll be back at some point, but just pretty much the worst case scenario for those 2 games. I mean, you didn't get shut out in either. That would have been the worst, but I mean, not much better than that.
Yeah, the power play is the biggest thing that stood out. 0 for 6.
Awful.
They can't get the puck in the offensive end. And that drop back pass, I want to drop kick whoever created that for the Buffalo Sabres. It's the stupidest thing in the world, because what happens is you drop the pass back, and then guess what? One player has to go through 8 players that are just standing at the blue line. It's so stupid. It happens so often. It almost burned him, but Levi made a great breakaway save. Otherwise, it would have been in the back of their net. It's so stupid. Like, it's so planned. It makes no sense. It's the same thing over and over and over. And again, I'm not a hockey guy. I'm not claiming to know something that I don't, but it's pathetic. It was gross. It makes no sense. 0 for 6. You're changing nothing. And then guess what I saw at practice today? Matt Ellis is back helping the power play once again. He should never see the ice. He should not be contributing to any conversations because he was a part of the power play last year. I hate it. Cousins and Quinn were invisible. It's Yoki Haru is not a top line defenseman. The lack of effort, the lack of care. I don't know if they spent too long in Europe. All I'm saying is come opening night on Thursday. They got Thursday versus LA, Saturday versus Florida. They has to come out and prove that this is a different type of team. Like, you can't revert back, and I think that was a big thing that happened in these 2 games is they got scored upon, and then they just reverted back to what they've known for the past 13 years. And again, I know nobody was on this team for all 13 years, but it's a track record of losing, and it needs to change, and hopefully Lindy Ruff is the coach that can get it through. I had high expectations that what we saw Friday would not transition into Saturday, and it was pretty much the same thing. Yes, they got the 1 goal, they got the dirty goal, and I was hoping that, hey, this would be something that would generate, hey, if we just go to the net, we can get these dirty goals, because Greenway was not going to let that stop. Tage, who ended up getting it, was not going to let that stop from going in the net. And I understand, the 2 goalies for New Jersey played very, very well. And that one save that he made on Friday was unbelievable.
Oh,
but
my God.
There were also 2 opportunities, one in both games, where it was a wide open net and they just missed it. You need to cash in these opportunities. And like you said, they lost J.J. Peterka, who does seem like he has a chance to play on Thursday. They lost Benson, who does not sound like it's a long term. He should be back very shortly. But this is not a team where you can lose top talent on a team that's already looking like they're going to be struggling to score goals. And this power play, man, like, I had such high hopes going into the season. Again, it's only 2 games out of 82, but it looked painful. Like, this, again, what have we been saying this is year 4 of this now? If you're gonna stink, at least be entertaining. And they stunk, and it was boring, and it was please, for the love of everything, don't have another year like we've had the last few years, because this computer screen that I'm looking at right now is going to either have a fist or a face through it, and I hope it's neither, because I don't want to replace it, and I don't want to hurt my fist or my face. But Phil, yeah, Thursday versus LA, Saturday versus Florida, 2 more games on the next show. Is there anything else with the Sabres, or can we shut this down and hope and pray that Thursday it's going to get ugly, Phil. I really believe that it's going to get super, super ugly if they don't score first on Thursday, or if it turns bad, it's going to get ugly, because fan base is sick and tired of waiting around and relying on, hey, it's coming.
Yeah, and you already mentioned it, but the no response on Saturday was upsetting with Lindy Ruff as coach. You'd hope that he was doing some yelling after Friday, and then it would change on Saturday. It didn't, but the other piece of that, which I think he's also disappeared, is Darlene, the new captain, really didn't make much of an impact in this game. Okay, then we'll hope.
That's my only hope, because he did not look good. I'm not hoping he's still hurt, but I'm hoping that's the reason that we did not
hoping
see
that's his
Darlene.
excuse, because he was not doing what Darlene normally does. He had 3 shots, but also, again, just the exciting plays of him going, defense to offense, sprinting through, doing something exciting, wasn't really there. So hopefully this whole team, I don't know, like you said, Thursday's going to be interesting. Like, if they win their next 2 games, I think you right the ship. If you lose 2, but you're close and entertaining, it's something. But if you get smacked in the next 2, good luck.
So before we get into our next and final segment, which will be the Bandits and an overview of the NLL offseason for 4 teams, let's go over our first sponsor of the show, Tap That Tap Room.
Tap That Tap Room is at 363 Delaware Street in Tonawanda, New York. They are Buffalo's first women-owned self-pour bar. How that works is you go there, you load up a card, and you can taste or try as many of their 30 consistently rotating taps, which offers a variety of beer, cider, sours, seltzers, and malt beverages. You can go and find your new favorite, or go and have something that you already love and just have a ton of it.
Yeah, I still suggest trying it a little bit before pouring a full glass. I did like it, so it did not come back to bite me. But you don't have to pour a full glass when you're pouring it yourself. So Wednesday, the 9th, which is today, 7:30, weekly trivia with Geeks Who Drink. Thursday, the 10th at 7 p.m., the weekly karaoke. Then Friday and Saturday are live music. Friday, the 11th at 7 p.m., Groove Bros are playing. Then Saturday at 6:30 p.m., a little bit earlier, the first appearance will be on stage is Nobody Special. The second one is the Crew Band. So 3 bands playing 2 nights, live music. Can't miss it whatsoever. So for any other upcoming events, check out their Facebook page, because I know they got a lot of stuff coming up for the fall season and Halloween coming up very quickly. You can check out their Facebook page, or check out tapthattaproom.com to find out what's on tap and what's on deck. Phil, we got some Buffalo Bandits action, and as I scroll back up, because there's a lot of NLL stuff we got to talk about, made some signings. Emerson Clark, Bryce Sweeting, and Dylan Robinson all signed 1-year deals. Emerson Clark and Bryce Sweeting were UFAs, so they could have signed anywhere. Dylan Robinson, his rights were still with Buffalo for 1 more year. He will be an RFA next year. That leaves just Adam Bomberry, who we'll talk about very shortly, and then Frank Clark, former Packers defensive lineman, Frank Brown, RFA. They also made a move of trading Justin Robinson to Ottawa for a 2028 conditional 6th-round pick. Now, for those of you who haven't done a little bit further digging, that 6 can become a 4th in 2028 if Justin Robinson makes their 21-man roster. Before that, the day before, they traded a 2025 6th-rounder. Now, Buffalo had their choice between, not their choice, but whichever was earlier, Phillies or Buffaloes that year from the Marcus Minichiello deal. Whichever one was higher was going to be theirs. Now they don't have to worry about that. They traded that to Philly for Tate Catoni and a 2026 6th-round pick. Now, for those of you who don't know or don't care, Catoni is a left forward, so that fills a bit of a gap, but a lot of action. 1 player going out the door, 4 coming in. It's going to be an absolute battle in training camp, and some of these not lower but back end of the roster positions are there for the taking for some of these players that have either re-signed or new faces that are coming in.
I think the NLL is the only sport that launches trades for picks that are so incredibly far in the future.
Basketball is so much worse.
Oh, okay.
Oh, the conditions on basketball is like the protected first round picks, and if it doesn't come in this draft, it's still protected the following year, and if it's not protected the following year, it's the following year. Those picks go out like 6 or 7 years. Like I remember when I was actually tracking them when they were still New Jersey Nets, and they made a trade for Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce. And they made trades like first-round picks that are just getting used this year, and that was like 10 years ago. It's basketball's stupid with that kind of stuff.
Fair enough. But yeah, as for the trades, I mean, I did like Justin Robinson, but we've talked about it a lot this offseason. He was benched in playoffs and in the championship, so kind of just showed you where on the pecking order he ended up becoming toward the end of the season. And with all of the draft picks they just made being a lot of defensemen, it kind of pushed him on the way out. It's kind of cool that can become a 4th-round pick. That's not a bad pick for Justin Robinson. The other guys coming in, I am doing my very best to remain calm and trust in the process and trust Dietrich because he has yet to let us down, especially these last 4 years. But these lefty forwards are absolutely hurting my soul and killing me internally for it's nothing against the players themselves. It's just the mental player that I have slotted into that spot that was Brandon Robinson, a big boy and kind of just that lane setter. They're bringing in a bunch of small lefty forwards, and it concerns me because it did not work previously. And when Brandon Robinson came in, Josh Byrne had his incredible season and had that kind of lane picking lefty forward to back him up, set picks, pick and rolls, give him some space out there to get his hands free and shoot. And they're bringing in just a lot of smaller lefties. We've talked about it before that there is a few bigger lefties on the team that could be, at the top of their list to make it and really be that guy. So it's going to be a big battle. And it's a long time before we actually know the starting roster. So nothing is, in conclusion or anything like that. So I will wait until that is kind of settled and we'll see how it goes. But the more and more they bring in smaller lefties, it just is, concerning for, again, how I've mentally built the left side of their roster. But the rest of it, honestly, I mean, I love having Dylan Robinson back. Like you said, he wasn't going anywhere. But Bryce Sweeting also pretty interesting. You have some news on him coming up, but good to see him just back in general and still kind of a part of the team.
Yeah, I'll try to fly through this. With the lefty forwards, I think there's one spot for like 5 guys battling it. I think it's going to be Emerson Clark. It's going to be Tate Katoni. It's going to be Clay Scanlon, who I think is currently the favorite to win that one. It's got Jake Rosa and Kellen Pulera. So I really think it's 5 players battling for one spot. I think Scanlon is probably the one right now that I think has the edge, but them just trading for Tate Katoni, I think he's probably in the second spot right there, and then you can toss in Clark, Pulera, and Rosa for the next 3. So it's definitely going to be an interesting, very important position is the lefty forward that's going to be the lane center for both Kluch and Byrne. Like you said, when McCauley and Brandon Robinson have both been there, that's when Josh Byrne has been unlocked. And I understand that Josh Byrne can have unbelievable seasons himself, but having those lane sets and how much credit they've given Brandon Robinson for doing all the dirty work, and when Brad McCauley was here, all the dirty work, it definitely stands out.
Helps.
That they're going a little bit different way for the lefty forwards. But more news, and I don't think we could have listened to this because I think it comes out on Wednesdays, but Lacrosse Classified, if you're not listening, go listen to them. A weekly podcast, Jake Elliott and Tino Farrell. They do an unbelievable job, and it's year round, and their main thing is the NLL in the in season. They still talk about it in the off season, but then they talk summer ball as well. But Dietrich was on the show. He said probably no Anton Giovanni this year due to work conflict. He just graduated, so it makes sense. Can't really get away. Likely no Sweeting, and for everybody that's saying, hey, they just signed him a deal. If they sign him, that means whenever he can come play because of work, and he just had a new baby, I think he said like 8 or 9 months ago, you're already signed. So currently he can go on the holdout list and he still has a deal. So you're not going to lose him to anywhere else. That's kind of why that deal was signed with Bryce Sweeting. Sounds like Matt Vince is back. He all but confirmed it. So I'm glad that I stopped the Mad Matty Minute. And then for Brandon Robinson, the big reason that he got traded, he said, was because he was an RFA. And when you're an RFA, you can field offers from other teams. And he was getting a lot of traction on that. And what's a bit weird is Rochester, I don't believe, has signed him to a deal yet. But getting a player like Thomas Whitty, and he was talking about, hey, Whitty can kind of take over for the Ian McKay if we want Ian McKay out the front door instead of the back door, which I'm still not the biggest fan of.
So we've talked a lot about.
I still like Ian McKay in the transition game. If you can have him and Whitty in the transition game, that would probably be better than just running Ian McKay out the front door. But mind you, it does sound like at least one positive, Anton Giovanni not playing this year, and possibly, with work conflicts and not signing a deal, is his rights are still with Buffalo, and you don't have to worry about signing him to a deal and, him not making the team, going down to the practice squad, or possibly having to go sign somewhere else. So I think that is one of the advantages of him not being able to play this year and extending it to next year is, this team's already loaded, and next year everybody will be a year older, so maybe there'll be more spots next year when, we go through this whole rigmarole again.
Yeah, I wonder if they ever, and obviously no one would ever admit this, but just be like, hey, you got a work conflict coming up, right? Maybe for a whole season you can't make it? That sounds great. We'll see you next season. We like you. We want you on the team, but just wait a year. Just wait a year and go work, make some money. We appreciate it. Thanks, and we'll see you next year.
Yeah, thank you for your service. But we will continue the look around the NLL. We're already about 40 minutes in, so maybe 5 minutes per team here. Try to keep it around the hour. But we'll start with Halifax, and this is kind of
also
what we thought might be happening.
Your alphabet's wrong, just so you know.
I understood that. I'm blaming producer Pat for this because I think I sent it to him in the right order, and then we're starting Halifax first instead of Georgia, so deal with it because that's what the picture was on the picture he sent me. If I could get I'm moving, Phil, so I can't get TV work. That's my weekly.
He's
reminder.
freaking out.
But yeah, this is kind of what we were thinking or / expecting from Halifax is a big changeover. They've acquired Jason Knox and Pat Foley from the dispersal draft. They acquired Thomas Hogarth from Calgary in their firestorm. They traded out Eric Fennell. They lost Ryan Benesh to San Diego. They lost Austin Stotts to Saskatchewan. They lost Luke Manigan to Ottawa. They lost David Brock to Las Vegas. They did re-sign a bunch of players, more secondary pieces. You still got Randy Stotts out there as a UFA. It's definitely a massive changeover from the Halifax that we have seen in the past, and that's kind of what we said going into this offseason. I was kind of saying, hey, either the players or the head coach has to be changing. You can't run this back for a third straight season and be a one-and-done playoff team, and they do look like they changed quite a bit. The offense is going to look similar but very different with some of these players. I think getting Dawson Thied back for 3 more years as an RFA, getting a young player like Jason Knox there, it's going to still be a very solid team. I just don't think it's going to be the type of team that we have seen the past 3 years because of all the talent that went out the door. Maybe if you can get Randy Stotts back, who is a UFA, he can sign anywhere, that would help, but as the offense, defense, and goaltending stands right now, they seem like a on the border type playoff team.
Yeah, they have still some solid pieces just on the team and plenty of talent, and this dispersal draft is just very frustrating to see other teams get such incredible talent without having to do anything other than be bad the year before. Jason Knox is just an incredible talent and just what a pickup for them for free. I hate it. But yeah, like you said, Thied for 3 years. He's a big part of that offense. He was 5th last year on the team. Knox coming in, he's going to be very helpful, very young player, but could be on the rise himself. Cody Jamieson, a little bit older, but still a great player. Peterson led their team last year. He's looking good. And then their defense still has a solid core. Withers, Smith, Hozak, Bell, Armstrong. Like their defense is still pretty loaded. So even though their offense is probably going through a bit of a transition, not really as strong as you'd like, especially on that right side, they really don't have a lot of depth over there outside of Peterson. And Hogarth, yes, he's here and there, but he's mainly kind of a lane setter himself. He's a kind of that physical grinder out there. He's not really one who's going to throw up a lot of points. So we'll see what their younger players can do. Aaron Woods, I mean, yes, he's a little bit older. He had an okay season last year, and then Camden being a little bit younger. We'll see if their right side has much of a pop to it, but it doesn't look like it on paper. But that defense still very solid, and then their goaltending. Warren Hill's not bad by any means. He's I don't know, like I would consider him a top half of the league goalie for sure, but I don't know if he's top tier of a goalie. He's not the elite of the elite, which there's only a few of them in the entire league for a reason, but he's still a very strong goalie. I don't know if he's necessarily what's going to get them over the hump, but I think this for them is a transition year that could also end up being a little bit better than people expect.
Yeah, you know what that right side could use? A Randy Stotts. That would probably help.
It would help. It would help.
Yeah,
it would help.
Peterson? Yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit. I mean, he had 47 points in just 9 games. You double that, you're looking at close to 100 points on that right side. He'd be pretty helpful. I can't believe that some of these players, and we'll continue to talk about some of them, are still UFAs just kind of floating. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, as we move on to Georgia in a second, I'll pull up the current UFAs. It's still a pretty loaded list. But yeah, the defense is still pretty solid. Colton Armstrong, Tyson Bell, all the names you kind of already mentioned. Ryan Tarafanko, 3 years still on this team right now. But it is going down to the goaltender position, and it is Warren Hill, who's 32 years old, 1 year left. He'll be a UFA next year. I think this is his last go-around in Halifax to try to prove that, hey, I can be this franchise goalie for years to come, even at 32, because Abrams, he had a very, very solid Worlds tournament and earned himself a contract with Halifax. So it's not like they got nobody in the wings. Drew Hutchinson did come in relief a few times with Warren Hill, did lead the comeback for when they beat the Buffalo Bandits when we were at Tap That Tap Room watching the game. But yeah, Warren Hill can have very, very good games, and then he can also just, poop the bed. But now that there's Abrams and Hutchison behind him, there's going to be a battle for that number 2 goaltender. Like I said, Halifax I can see finishing anywhere from 6th to like 11th, and it's going to be one of those type of years where, hey, can their offense really jive with the addition of Jason Knox, with the loss of Benny and Shanks, and possibly Randy Stotts if he does not come back? You're going to need guys like an Aaron Woods to step up. You're going to need guys like Hogarth to step up. You're going to need guys like a Dawson Thied to even contribute even more than he did last year, and I'm a big fan of Dawson Thied. But we'll move on to Georgia here. This is a team who was 1 goal away from advancing to the semifinals, and Josh Byrne kind of ended that dream. But they acquired Seth Van Scheppen from Calgary. Again, another Calgary player out the door. Caleb Kuber from the dispersal draft. They got a bunch of young players re-signed. This was a team that kind of just is running it back like they did last year. The only UFA currently right now is Jeremy Thompson. The forwards are looking good. You're kind of running back the same forward group that, yes, I think they still need more from their studs. I think Andrew Q had a very solid season. I think Shane Jackson had a very solid season. I think Lyle Thompson had a very solid season. But I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, they were all under 100 points. They need somebody that can really top this out. You had good goaltending from Brett Dobson. I think the back end right now is pretty solid with them being able to retain John Rannigan, and Jordan McIntosh is on his final year, and TJ Camizio is on 1 year deal. I will like to see what Alex Bean adds to this defense as the first round pick that they took in. Ethan Riggets comes in as a 2020 first round pick, not comes in, but he's still sitting there. So you're looking at this team right now. It's a team that's ready to win. And it'll be very interesting if they can take that next step and get out of the first round. You saw what they did 2 years ago when they went on that run after a very poor start. They had a very solid year last year running, head-to-head with Buffalo. They beat him in the regular season, came 1 goal close to making it to the semifinals in the playoffs. But this is a team that has the stud in net. They have some studs at forward and some really good players on defense. So I really do think that this could be a team that, is more of a sleeper, that's not really talked about with the likes of San Diego, that's not talked about with the likes of Buffalo and Albany. But I think they could be that tier team that's right behind them that nobody is really talking about going into the season.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing they're really missing is their offense to take another step forward with, like you said, it's interesting to see a team this close to being great, not bring anybody in. I mean, yes, their offense is solid across the board. There's no one you'd really want to necessarily replace straight up, but to not bring a giant impact player in, if possible, to a team that is pretty much one impact offensive player away from being a really, really big championship contender. Last year, they were one of 5 teams to not score at least 200 goals. They tied with the Roughnecks and the Wings, and we all know how PK feels about the Roughnecks offense. So to see them in the same kind of tier, last year at least, with them is just not great. I mean, like you said, not a single 100-point player. They had an 87, 87, 83, 57, 50. So really great, but again, they're missing that one over-the-top kind of person, and this team is built to win a championship. Can their offense get them there is the question, and we even saw it in the playoffs with the Bandits. I mean, if they had a little bit better of an offense, they likely win that game. I mean, the Bandits needed to come back at the end. Their defense held the Bandits. Dobson held the Bandits. It was the fact that their offense, and I mean, yes, the Bandits defense is really good. Matt Vince is really good, so it wasn't going to be easy, but that's kind of what let them down in that game. And then the Bandits were able to take it and then win it all. But I think this team is that close to being a championship contender, but it's just, can their offense take another step forward with the same players is going to be the question.
2 things there. One, Lyle Thompson, I think, is going to have a very, very, not bounce back year, but a very solid year, in my opinion. After Worlds, after playing the MSL or MLS.
He looks incredible.
Yeah, he's still really, really good at 32 years old. Him and Jackson still have that great connection. I think Q coming in and getting another solid season under this, I think their offense is there. They just need another solid season, like an unbelievable season from Lyle Thompson. The only other thing, Caleb Benedict, who missed all of last year in his, quote, rookie year, signed a 2-year deal. He's a righty, 24 years old, but he was a 2023 first-round pick, 19th overall. His addition to this lineup, Carter Page, who was a second-round pick this year, those 2 pieces adding to this offense, it will be interesting to see how integral they get to this. And then the third one that I did forget, thank you, Georgia, for whatever reason, and Seth Oakes for not playing in that playoff game. It was mind-boggling. We still don't know the reason behind it. We don't know if he picked up an injury, couldn't travel, what it was, but he had a pretty good year last year. When he scored, it scored in bunches. So shout out to you, Georgia Swarm and Seth Oakes, for not playing in that game. But we'll move on to the Las Vegas Desert Dogs. I do have this one in order. This was one of the most active teams that did a lot, that improved their team, but I don't know if they improved it enough to get over that hurdle and get into a playoff position. They added a lot of talent, though. I mean, the first trade and the first major trade this offseason was Calgary starting the unload, and that's a common theme in this one. Shane Simpson, Christian Delbianco's best friend in the transition game, goes over there. He signs a 1-year deal. Kyle Killen from Vancouver signs a 1-year deal. Justin Getty from Albany signs a 1-year deal. Justin Donville, Dylan Hutchison, Brandon Godwin, all from the dispersal draft. Donville and Hutchison signed 1-year deals. They traded Griffin Hall to Calgary in that Shane Simpson deal. The only player they really lost was Rob Hellier. And they brought in guys like David Brock. They brought in Matthew Bennett. They brought in Dylan Kinnear. Winners and more veteran pieces on here. They re-signed Casey Jackson. They re-signed Landon Kells, who wasn't really going anywhere. They re-signed a UFA and Tor Reinhold. So on top of that, they get a bunch of rookies in here as well. The only UFAs really are Brandon Cleveland, Zach Greer, and Adrian Sorichetti. So it's very interesting to see what this offense is going to look like. I think that was one of the major pieces that was holding this team back last year, is they weren't getting consistent offense and they weren't getting consistent goaltending. With Jonathan Donville in the mix here, with another year Jack Hanna, with another year Casey Jackson behind there. You add in, Patroris, Adam Patroris, 2023 first-round pick, second overall. Dylan Watson gets another year. Shane Wesley. Under Sean Williams, I think this offense can be really, really good. It's, can Landon Kells take another step now that he has competition behind him in a Justin Getty who's ready to take his spot, who had a very good one game taking over for Doug Jamieson, and that was not the reason they lost that game whatsoever. It was the offense didn't come through. But this team will be very interesting to see how if they're able to take that next step in their progression to be one of those playoff type teams. I think they're another year away from being able to do it, but I do love all the moves they made this offseason.
Yeah, I think they're definitely a building team. I think they need players like Donville and Hannah to take a massive step forward in order for them to really push it to a playoff spot and then some. I mean, Hellier, yes, he's a little bit older, but he last year was their number 1 point getter, and then Zach Greer, still a UFA, is number 4 on their team last year, 52 points. So bringing him back would be a big step for this team. It'll be interesting to see if they do or not, but overall, I don't know, this team is just, it's lacking, but like you said, I think they're making the right moves. They're heading in the right direction. They're rebuilding correctly, but at the same time, I don't know if this is the year for them. I think they're still, like you said, at least a year away with some of these younger forwards trying to take that next step, with them kind of rebuilding their roster quite a bit. I mean, Kierst is just one of the greatest defensive players in the entire league right now, but outside of that, and then Shane Simpson, like you said, in transition to a Reinhold, they don't really have a great defensive core, and they don't really have a mind-blowing offensive core to really take that next step. But I do think they are going in the right direction. They're rebuilding correctly. And like you said, can the young goalies also take that next step? So this whole team is hoping, very similar to the Sabres, to take that next step. I don't know if this is their year, but I do think they are building it correctly for the future.
Stay out of the box. I remembered from writing all those articles, when they stayed out of the box, they played very well. When they got in the box, they had lots of issues, and it's common sense, but I mean, they weren't able to do it. But we'll move on to the last team
the
here.
Buffalo Bandits.
Yeah, stay out of the box. Last team here, we went 4 this week. Remember, we'll do 3 the following 2 weeks. Ottawa, who was New York, Ottawa Black Bears. They were also very active. Nathan Grennan comes over from Albany in a trade, and then the massive trade that brought over a piece that they desperately needed in a veteran goalie in Zach Higgins from Philly. They acquired Phil Caputo, Liam Patton, both from the dispersal draft. They used both of those players to acquire Zach Higgins. So once again, Panther City, the league thanks you. Will Johnson got traded out. They re-signed their face-off man in Jay Thornberry. They re-signed Taggart Clark, who came over in midseason on a trade. He wasn't going anywhere. Larson Sundown, a 3-year deal. Brent Noseworthy, Matt Marner, Riley O'Connor does come back to this team. They did sign some free agents in Luke Manigan from Halifax. They signed Josh Courier from Calgary, another Calgary guy. But they do have 2 bigger name UFAs in Damon Edwards and Stephen Keogh. But this offense, with Jeff Teat, with Larson Sundown, Riley O'Connor, this left side is very stacked. The left side is very stacked. The right side needs a little bit more help. But now that you have a steady goaltender in Zach Higgins, you can have a battle behind him in Delvin Shanahan and Cam Dunkerley, where Dunkerley and Shanahan can kind of learn behind Higgins again, who's still got 2 more years. But this team is, if they get solid goaltending and improve defense, this team can score with the best in the league. And I'm not falling into the trap, just like I'm sure you're not falling into the trap of calling them to be a playoff team. But this team, if they're going to make a playoff run, it has to be this year, because once again, Jeff Teat has 1 more year. He will be an RFA next year, but he's getting closer and closer to UFAs. And if you're not winning with a Jeff Teat, he's likely out the door and doesn't want to keep continuing to play for a franchise that can't get into the playoffs.
Yeah, and realistically, I don't know if this team is the team to do it. I know I was burned last year by thinking they can, but this is, you were 2 years ago, I was last year. This is the same kind of situation we're looking at. And yes, they've been building. They've been getting better. They were close to playoffs last year. They finished 9th with, 10 other teams pretty much that finished 8-10, which is...
they won the offseason.
Right, and they made good moves, but they were one of the worst, not the worst, but one of the worst with goal differential, and a lot of that will come from hopefully more steady goaltender play, but at the same time, their offense through Teat is incredible, but also needs to take another step forward. I mean, you look at it, Jeff Teat had 130 points, which is mind-blowing, but after that, the next closest is 79, then 72. So, yes, he's got great supporting pieces, and a lot of that comes from just how incredible Jeff Teat is, that he can just do what he does. to kind of just force you to get points, whether you want to score or not. He's going to make you score, but I think they need still some of those players to take the next step. And it's hard looking at a team like this where just mentally you look at Albany, you look at a team like this, you look at the Bandits, where NLL and lacrosse, the prime time age, especially because we're so dialed into fantasy football and football in general, where you're seeing these guys where 28, 29 years old, you're like, oh, their career's over for football. It's done. They're washed up. Get rid of this old dynasty running back. He's, trash pretty much at 28 years old doing things I couldn't possibly imagine. And then you go to the NLL, and I was looking at guys like Connor Kiernan, where he's 28, and he had a really great 79-point season, and you're kind of looking at that as like, oh, is it kind of old? Like, no, like he's in his prime, and he needs to take that next step. And if he can take the next step, Sundown at 27, if he can take another step forward. So it's players like that where they seem a little bit older, but they're not. For the NLL, they're pretty much in their prime. And if they can take steps forward, this whole team can take steps forward, especially like you mentioned, with Higgins back there, with the second year of Callum Jones, who looked like an absolutely incredible rookie. Some other solid defensive pieces that are a little bit more on the veteran side, but still really good. Matt Mariner, like you said, he's younger, looks really good. So they have some pieces for sure. Can the entire team take that next step forward? Like you said, the two UFAs are huge. Edwards for defense, Keogh for offense. Both pretty big to be missing if you do end up missing them. So we'll see what happens with that. But Higgins should be a little bit more of a steady force on the back end, which should help the entire team improve. And again, if their offense can take that next step forward, maybe this is the year they make playoffs. Well, you said I'm not falling for that trap, which means if neither of us pick them to make playoffs, they will be making playoffs.
Yeah, I think the Higgins acquisition is a massive one because not only will he help the goaltending position, he's going to help the defense be in the right positions to succeed as well. I know November is going to be our bold predictions, but I'll give a fun one here. Jacob Dunbar, who they acquired from San Diego, I think he's going to rival Connor Kiernan for the righties for leader in points coming up this season.
Okay.
2021 first-round pick, 13th overall. He was very, very good in the limited amount of time he got for San Diego, and you saw how much talent they had out there. I think he's going to be a very dark force for the Ottawa.
But a bright force for them.
A very bright force. I did pull up the free agencies. I know we're over an hour right now, but Callum Crawford's still sitting out there. Randy Stotts, like we mentioned. Stephen Keogh, we mentioned. Dan Lintner from Toronto. Reed Reinhold's still sitting out there. Dane Doby, who just signed with Calgary, is off the list. I have not updated this since he signed his deal. Zach Greer, which we mentioned. Chris Wardell, Logan Shush are the forwards. Then transition, you got Joey Capito, who we mentioned last week. Jeremy Thompson, who we mentioned this week. And Brendan Cleland, who we mentioned this week. And then for the defense, there's still some studs out there. And Damon Edwards, who I believe it was Adam Levy reported that he's not re-signing with Ottawa, so he's going to be moving somewhere. You got Adrian Sorichetti, Brett Medisk from Vancouver, he's still sitting out there. Sheldon Burns, Eric Sewell, Leo Storos is still sitting out there, and then the goalies, you really only got Aaron Bold and Tyler Carlson. So there are some veteran pieces still in free agency with camp quickly approaching, so it'll be interesting to see who some of these bigger name players. We just saw Dane Doby go back to Calgary. Where does a Callum Crawford come back, if he does decide to come back? Where does a Randy Stotts, who's only 30 years old, a UFA, where does he go? There's some bigger name players still in free agency that can find new homes and shake up entire teams that can give them the edge to get into the playoffs or edge to become a more title contending team. So, Phil, that pretty much wraps up this episode. We covered a lot. Next episode will be shorter, maybe? Fingers crossed. You did say, I did say it before we started recording. It might be right around an hour. We're right around an hour, but we're over it. Anything else in this episode before we shut it down?
The Bills and Sabres. I'm wearing my Do Something shirt. They both need to do something, not necessarily make a trade or go get somebody, but just play better. Both of you play much, much better.
Just a little. Just a little bit.
Offense on both, especially. Turn it up.
Yeah, Thursday. I'm going to be at a brewery. I don't know if you're going, but maybe they'll have the game on. And if they don't, it saves me some fees, at least. But yeah, on our next show, hang on, I can pull it up. We'll talk about the Bills versus Jets game. We'll talk about the two Sabres games. And then on the docket next week is San Diego, Rochester, and Philadelphia. Look, I'm not proving it. Pat, you did the logos in the wrong order, man. Like, that's what you're going to get next week. This is not my fault. Like, Saskatchewan is on the bottom. Like, it's out of order, man. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, see,
did you tell him to put them alphabetically?
No, but he did that on purpose. So I don't know if he just Googled it in a weird order. But this is our producer, Pat. Write your letters to BuffaloSportsCollective.com. We'll make sure he gets the letters of disappointment. You don't say you hate him, but it comes off better if you
learn
just say
your
you're very
alphabet.
disappointed. If you just say you're disappointed, it hurts deeper. So yeah,
It's true.
that will be San Diego, Rochester, and Philly on the next show. Some varying degrees of teams next week, like it was this week. But yeah, thanks for all listening to another episode, and we'll keep pumping out this content if you keep listening. So thank you all for listening to another episode of the Buffalo Sports Collective. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Visit our website at BuffaloSportsCollective.com. You can check out our store on our link tree or on our socials or at the shop tab at the top of the website. Follow our channel wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, and make sure you leave us a review on Apple and Spotify. Until next time, bye-bye.